So, Dr. Lakhvinder Singh, I address you the question. What is the solution from the point of view from the farmer, and also if you imagine that if you are the government, what would be the solution? How the government can pacify this crisis or the farmers and to convince all these people?
Thank you very much for asking this question, but I think the answer is not easy. There is no easy answer because the problem is very complicated and it will take some time before we can reach the real workable solution which works for everybody. Because there are so many parties involved, a lot of complicated issues are coming into the same place. So to have a sustainable and workable solution which works for the whole country will take time. But for the timing, I think to pacify the farmers, government should accept the farmers' demand and discard these laws, repeal these laws, and then we can have a thorough discussion what needs to be done, how to protect the farmers' interest, how to protect the consumers' interest, how to protect the bureaucrats' interest. Lot of parties involved. So there is no quick answer. What the government did now, they just passed the law without consulting the stakeholders. So solution is, I strongly feel the need of repealing these laws first. First these laws are repealed and farmers are sent home peacefully. Then we can start the real discussion. Then we can say, invite the different stakeholders, corporates, government bureaucrats, consumers, laborers, farmers, and this environmentalists. All of them have a stake, So there's no quick answer. It's a very complicated issue because once you touch the agriculture sector, everything is impacted. So I will strongly recommend for the government of India to avoid the catastrophe which can hurt India strongly and thoroughly. We must show restraint. We must show restraint. Government should not insist on keeping these laws when such a large section of Indian population is resisting these laws. So easy way will be repealing these laws, and then let the real discussion, real debate starts in the Indian society, and what come out of it can be made into law. We must think the interest of everybody. That's very important. So we need an all-inclusive approach, which works for everybody in India. Thank you.
Okay. So now I address the same question to Professor Emmanuel Pastright. What do you see that if there is any hope or any solution? What's your opinion?
Well, there is always hope and a possible solution. As Dr. Singh suggests, it's not easy, but I would say that the difficulty has to do with the concept. I think three main issues. One is what the role of government is. The second is what the concept of economics are, how we define economics. Mm-hmm. And the third is the length or the period of time over which we assess policy or economics or the health of society. Mm-hmm. So in the first case, government, India, the United States and Korea all have constitutions that define what the government are. They're not the same, and I didn't prepare, but I can basically tell you that all these constitutions say that the government, according to the Constitution, is to serve the needs of the people, and that the citizens are ultimately the ones who are authorized, whom the government is to represent. As Confucius said, a long time ago, he says the way to have a good society is that the son should be a son, the father should be a father, the farmer should be a farmer, and the government should be a government. And it sounds really simple, but it's extremely difficult because so many times sons don't want to be sons and fathers don't want to be fathers, and government officials don't want to do their job as government. So maybe the most fundamental immediate step is the government should play the role of government and follow the Constitution, which in the case of Korea or the United States, and probably India as well, defines the government's job is to defend the interests of the people.
So then there I pose your question, Professor Emmanuel Pastright. Yes. what would be the first step the Indian government, for example, would behave as a legitimate Indian government, what they should do right now when there is this kind of a protest going on?
Well, I think the first step would be to, you asked me a tough question because my position is maybe a little stronger.
I think
Dr. Singh.
Professor Emmanuel has already answered the question. First step Indian government should be to protect the constitution.
Constitution. And the constitution says the people of India are
more important than corporations. So agriculture sector has been defined as a belonging to the state subject.
Right.
But now the government is trying to take over the state's power to the central government.
Right.
So constitution is being almost violated by the central government.
Yeah, so it is a violation of the constitution.
Yeah, to some extent. So first step, as the Professor said, we can start with the protection of the constitution. Right. Protecting the constitution is more important than anything else.
Right, that's correct. That's the source of legitimacy of government.
Legitimacy of the government. Government should think about the people's interest, not corporate interest.
Right,
government is made for people.
Well, this is true for the United States too, or for that matter,
and for Korea.
I want to talk about the other two issues. The second is what the economy is. So there has been an effort, and it's become common sense in Korea, in other countries, that the essence of economics is economic growth, productivity, consumption, and trade. How much you buy or sell overseas. None of these components has anything to do with the economy, as it was defined for the last 10,000 years. It's a totally new idea that economy should be run on the basis of growth, consumption, production, and trade. So many people in this, I saw this in my own students who took economics classes and came back and told me about economics. So the assumption that protecting agriculture or small farms would somehow be more important than growth or foreign investment or agricultural trade is something which is very hard for people to understand, because they think that growing rice or whatever and sending it overseas to people you don't know to buy, which is very destructive, is good for the economy. In the case of India, this process, which Dr. Singh described, could easily result in the corporations controlling the land thinking that they can grow some product in India to sell in America or Australia or whatever, and let the Indians starve, right? Because
that is the biggest threat to the, because India has huge poor population.
Right.
If corporates start producing for the world, who will produce for the masses? So that leads us to very serious social crisis, economic and social crisis.
But isn't it then, from the corporate's point of view, isn't it a bad business or is it a good business?
Corporates may make money.
From the corporate's point of view, namely right now in India, what is behind this corporate, then they are losing which party's money as a bad business and where they win.
Corporates may make money, but people of India don't make money. Their wealth is concentrating into the few hands. So
that's right.
The gap between rich and poor is increasing. If you study Indian data, only 2-3 people are making money. Rest of the people are just being left out. Right. India has a huge poor population, and as a responsible government and responsible scholars, we simply cannot ignore their interests. Suppose I am based in Korea, I make a decent living, but my family members are in India, so I have a really legitimate interest to worry about them.
For sure.
So there's no way we can keep quiet. When such a huge power gap is happening, economic inequality is happening, it becomes very important for us to talk about this issue.
So the third issue is time span. So there's a tendency, which has been forced upon us by the way in which the media reports, in the way in which economics is taught, in the sort of ideological structure in which we calculate profit and growth in.
끝났어요? 아직 도구 있어요?
돌고 이제 빨간 물려.
근데 지금 아직 저기 녹음 되고 있죠?
네.
We could continue.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure what to do.
Sorry.
So let's start again. So the third point is time span.
Yes.
So are we talking about 3 months, 6 months, a year, 5 years, 10 years, 100 years? The tendency has been over the last 40 years, and especially the last 10 years, to focus on short-term profits, 6 months or less. Certainly, a long period would be 5 years. And so you have all these investment banks which back these enterprises looking at short-term. If you calculate short-term, then there's a lot of money to be made from destroying agriculture or selling products overseas. If you look out 100 years, right, and you see the damage to aquifers, to the soil, and the social structure, and the destruction of culture and society, then none of this is worth it. Because if you calculate it long term, you can see the damage done.
Everybody lose.
Basically everybody loses. Even the rich lose.
So, Professor Emmanuel Pastreich, we were discussing that even though there is a general and total unified doomsday or ruin that everybody loses direction, the heading, then what was the main? Still, they must have some kind of an agenda of this mega corporate or the power player. So what's your opinion about it?
Well, I think there are some serious psychological and spiritual challenges for the people who are making these decisions at the highest levels. And I'd say there are two elements of it. One is there's an obsessive process within the brain in which the brain starts to shut down. It ceases to make a full, complex assessment of human experience and focuses on only certain topics.
Yes.
This is combined with the reliance of the super rich and these corporations on what we call AI, artificial intelligence, which are these massive banks of supercomputers that calculate profit. So these supercomputers are essentially telling the banks or these wealthy individuals what to do based upon their calculation of profit.
Yeah, the supercomputer doesn't have a human rationale.
That's
or
correct.
Human reason.
It's a psychopath. It's basically, it has no
Man-made.
emotions, and so it's not the supercomputer and it's not the rich. It's the combination of these two.
Oh, a new form of a monster.
It's a sort of a hybrid monster.
Hybrid monster of pure greed.
Well, tell me.
Okay, I would like to add, so far, Korean farmers have failed to relate themselves with the agitation in India,
Right.
but its time has come when they should see the bigger picture. Because the farming crisis in India is not local, it's a worldwide crisis. And
Sure.
we have to see how the Korean farmers are victims of the same thinking.
Right.
Thinking is overgreed. Around 30-40 years ago, corporates in Korea destroyed the farming sector, rural population, rural agriculture. So the overgreed which could destroy the Korean agriculture sector is now destroying the Indian corporate sector. So we have to connect Korea and India. It's very important.
Right.
And we have to
Absolutely.
learn important lesson from Korea. And Korean farmers, so far Korean farmers have not come up in numbers to support Indian farmers. The whole purpose of today's seminar was that Korean farmer should rise up to the occasion and they see themselves what will happen if Indian farmers are
going to be their homework.
yes. So now suppose a huge population of India is moved to cities. Then naturally they will need food. From where the food will come? So food prices will increase all over the world. So Korean population will be affected.
Right.
And if the environment is destroyed, Korean population will suffer from that.
Right.
So Korean people will have failed to see the connection between farmers' education in India and their own food security.
Right.
So a bigger issue of nutrition security, and a bigger issue of corporate greed.
Right.
Corporate greed has made Indian corporates almost mad. They are refusing to see what they are trying to do. They are refusing to see the bigger picture, future picture. As I wrote in my recent articles also that worldwide impact of these laws will be huge. So this greed has to be stopped. and some kind of regional understanding has to come out that we are together all in this. And we have to come to the conclusion that what farmers are trying to do in India now must be supported by everybody in the world, because by the end of the day, food security is connected like seas. Seas are connected, food security is connected. Once you start buying food from the international market, everybody in the same line. So time has come when we should try to make Korean farmers understand that why they should support Indian farmers.
Right.
Thank you.
Then I'll ask you a question, Professor Pastorai. Who would come up and, for what reason, why would anybody, and who would stand against this invasion of greed? And does the greed spring from, or it falls down from the heaven, or that comes up from the people themselves?
Right. Well, it ultimately comes down to each of us individually, and our sort of moral commitment, and our commitment to work together with others to propose an alternative, right?
Mhm.
Not just merely to complain about the situation, but to say this is what should be and to organize to create it, starting with us. So that has been lost, I think, to a large degree. We've fallen into this ideology of consumption,
And overeating,
narcissism,
overweight.
oneself, what's it in for me? Very, very few people are thinking, and it's also very short term, right? Today, tomorrow, not what the impact of this will be on us for our grandchildren, right? Or beyond.
So then we are slowly coming to a conclusion of our session that to summarize, that people need to realize and be more aware that in this difficult time, on top of this international pandemic and all this, so people need to realize that their a single everyday survival, their way of life it is being impacted, and they have to somehow consider for the first time about the Indian agenda, Korean agenda, American agenda internationally. What can I do to stand against or repair whatever the damage that is being done and that is upcoming? So I think we need to all realize that this is indeed a crisis that everyone on this planet is facing, and we just cannot be an egoistical individual and just our immediate, just a family member or just friends. They only their lives are not important. It's everybody's lives important.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having us. Thank you,
Thank you.
Professor.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Yes.